This year, No Proof is at Tales of the Cocktail, and it's showing up as a live seminar. I'm joined by three hospitality greats who are joining me in seminar and on panel to talk about how they decided to remove alcohol from their lives, how they intended to do it with or without community, and who they got to become after. This is Generational Sobriety, a live No Proof recording.
And I guess that's a good place to begin. Hi, welcome to No Proof. I'm your host, Josh Gandy. I do want to take a moment just to recognize the fact that No Proof is in this room. That's huge for me. No Proof is in its 5th season, and it began as a selfish endeavor. I had celebrated 2 years of sobriety, and I realized that I had been pretty quiet about it, and I started to receive some of the benefits of a life without alcohol. And what that meant was a life where I felt well. It was a life where I felt. And those are the things that I started to share. And they look like little things like weight loss, like remembering somebody's story, like being up early and just being present when listening to somebody's story. And I guess I had shared enough of that to where my story was heard by LP O'Brien and Alex Jump of Focus on Health. And they had approached me and asked me to do a podcast for their platform. And at that time, I wasn't even listening to podcasts. I had never done anything to resemble a podcast, and I didn't know that I would be able to do it. And I had one episode, and I approached it like a journalist, and I had all these questions that I wanted my guests to answer. And by the second one, I realized that they were telling a part of my story, and I was hearing it back to me. And to be able to do that, I grew my own vocabulary. I was able to tell my own story more proficiently, and more people would be able to hear it. And the more people that heard those little stories that I was collecting, man, I was meeting more and more people at a time when I felt most alone and feeling like I was the only one that was going through it. So to celebrate 5 seasons means I've now met over 150 people, and that's just in recordings, that I didn't know existed in the very beginning. And 3 of those individuals are people that are to my left here. And we are in this room gathering to share our story and continuation, some of which have already been on the program. And Andry, we are scheduling ours as soon as this ends. But to just bring to light, who were those individuals that made that decision? What was happening in their lives when they decided to remove alcohol from their life? What was that process like? Did they have community? Did they wish for community? What happens when you give yourself to community in some ways? And most importantly, who do they get to be now? What I've learned about No Proof is that it is not a disaster story. It is not my role to hold you to the individual that you were when you made that decision, when you were living a life most harsh. It is who we get to be in celebration of the person that came after. That's where the growth is applied. That is where we become who we recognize. That is who we become when we introduce ourselves. And those are the people that I am proud to know and proud to be able to share in. I realize that I'm talking a lot without introducing you, so I'd just like to say, Chloe, thank you. Something that I really enjoy about you is just the fact that you can bring so much lightness to your cocktail program. Hospitality shines within you. It's extraordinary how creative you are able to be and really lead a prosperous and just exciting program, and that you're able to welcome folks into that. And I just want to say thank you again for being a part of this.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Chloe. I am the bar director for the Alinea Group, so I oversee the beverage programs for our bars and restaurants, probably most notably the Aviary. I have been sober for almost 2 years. Next month it'll be 2 years. Um, yeah, I guess, are we just jumping right into this, or are we going down the line?
We'll go down the line
Okay.
first.
On
Bjorn, you're not allowed to talk until I tell you what I love
that's
about
true.
you first.
First, yeah.
Bjorn, welcome back. Bjorn was on the very first season of No Proof. And you're someone that I have grown with in both our story and our storytelling. I love watching you work. I love watching you create cocktails, what you do with music, what you do with your own style, what you do with the way that you support others and live in support of others. I love that you're charming and that you bring your true and authentic self to everything that you do. And thank you for continuing to share your story with me and others.
Oh, thank you, Josh. I'm about to share it too. He's right. I met Josh obviously in the podcast in a very fresh time. I think I might have been maybe a year sober, maybe a year and a half. It was deep in lockdown in late 2021. But yeah, I'm Robert Bjorn Taylor. I'm a consultant and just a creative bartender sort from originally from Houston, Texas, by way of Liberia, West Africa. And I am based in Austin, Texas. I've had the blessing to be able to write some great cocktails for great brands. I've had the blessings for being able to learn and work in spaces of amazing bartenders, chefs, servers, and my complete love for hospitality is what kept me in it when I became sober in 2019 and almost pivoted away from it, but I was pulled right back in because I found a way. Like I figured out that I could still do this thing and not have to drink. But we'll get into that, right? Yeah.
Andry, I love the way that you share your story as well, and the way that you have contributed to, and the way that you build community in your work for and with Ben's friends. I love watching your story, especially unfold on social media. We share in physical activity, running and cycling, and being able to kind of like watch somebody grow within that and what they can do in both their body and mind is really profound, and something that I look to in you. You're an inspiration in many long and beautiful ways. And thank you so much for being a part of this.
Joshua, thank you so much for seeing me. And thank you for having me here. My name's Andry Rakatoniaina. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. And when I got sober, I was working as a bar manager at a bourbon bar in Louisville. It felt like the center of alcohol world. And that was May 10th of 2018. And I got a friend connected me with Ben's friends not long after I got sober. And in 2020, just before COVID, we launched our in-person meeting. And then due to COVID, we grew online meetings. And I've had the real fortune of seeing sobriety as a continued option despite all odds. And Ben's friends has connected me with that sense of purpose and offered me the opportunity to continue through service. And it's a joy to be a part of. So um, obviously more and more a part of it. And I think we're going to talk about identity. And it's really cool to see how identity allows change to happen through conversation. And ultimately, that's why I'm here. So really happy to be here with Ben's friends and with Joshua and Tails. It's a really cool thing to be seen.
Of course. And while you still have the mic, I'd love to start with you. Identity is such a big piece of this. And my journey with sobriety started with checking in with myself and realizing who I was and what my needs and wants were and being able to grow within that. And then it became paramount to me to kind of like have those looks back from the mountain, as I progressed into that 1 year of sobriety, that 5 year of sobriety. Who was I now versus who was I then? I lived a long time where I thought I was trying to live a life separate of that individual that made the decision of removing alcohol until I came to terms with that was the person who had no tools yet made the decision to become who I am now. So now I carry that version with me in awe of look what we've become, look what we've built. Can you take me back to who you were when you made that decision to remove alcohol? What was happening in your life and how did you flip that switch?
I think that's such a good question for me to answer now, 8 years later, because 3 years ago, I would have said one thing. And that thing would have been I was a bar manager who couldn't manage his life. And that would be true. But now the way I see it is I was a person who did not have the vocabulary to describe my living experience aside from saying I'm frustrated. And I had the answer, I don't know. Um, and what I was looking for was some sense of peace that I couldn't give myself. Um, I could give myself fun, what felt like fun, or chaos, or even opportunity, and it wasn't really sustainable. It felt like I didn't have enough time in the day to discover what the day could be, and I didn't have enough time uh, in a bottle to really find what I was looking for, and yet I kept on going back because it just felt euphoric. Um, So yeah, really lost in the sauce, really frustrated, and I was given the opportunity to see what my life could be through other people that I was working alongside at the bar, at the restaurant, at different restaurants, at different in different scenarios, and going from the point of being, oh, sobriety can't be for me, because look at what the world is providing me. Like, I get all of these things. I get all these connections and all these friends and recognition, like just to be seen like in Cheers. And yet, um, I can't go home to myself because that's not comfortable. And the one thing I'd really like to solidify is I thought I was doing a pretty good job, and I think I would be recognized as doing a pretty good job for as a brother, son, uh, coworker. But sobriety has really unlocked the capability for me to become more into those roles in a way that I enjoy and people get to enjoy as well. And maybe it's not even a point of enjoyment. Maybe it's just a point of being there. So I think I'll end my thoughts there. But such a great and important question, what identity can be.
Bjorn, can you walk us back to what you saw in the mirror way back when?
Well, yeah. I share a lot of the sentiments that Andrew's speaking of because I was in the same boat. I was management. Um, you know, I found myself in hospitality 20 plus years. Like that's where I found myself. I was being able to create and express myself differently. As you said, I was involved in music. I went to school for art. I worked as a graphic designer, but somehow, because of my barista work, I led myself into a bar to go and bartend. Like to something about it drew me. Mostly, I think because I wanted to interact with people. In fact, I think that's most of part of the reason. The downfall of being an addict or alcoholic is just that seeking of like community. So I felt like that was it. It was a perfect fit. So as I found all that, I became so enthralled. The passion was there, and learning about spirits, doing this, da da da, and I found myself lost. 2019, I was numb, like nothing worked anymore. Um, there was a disconnect from what that community I thought that I was so close knit with. That the passion that I had for creating cocktails was gone. I had technically kind of almost burnt everything down. Luckily, I never lost a job from my addiction, but it definitely played a part in not progressing as much as I could. So when I found myself through all the rock bottoms, because there was plenty of them, it just was me sitting with a cigarette, downloading an app, and trying something out. 1 month, I said, it was a fucking, what was it? Sober October. I swear to God, September 30th, I was like, I'm gonna just try this Sober October thing. No intention of probably staying sober. And just because I was numb, I did it 1 month. Then a week later, I found myself in Ben's Friends. Like, oddly enough, just started in Austin that summer. And it was the first time I ever admitted to myself I was an alcoholic. I'd been in AA and I've been to other things before, but it was something about sitting around with colleagues, talking and hearing them. Like you said, the mirror, something just opened up. And I didn't know at that point that I made a decision. Like but it was a feeling. 6 months passed by, never said anything to anybody about it. Christmas comes 2020 or 2019, and I leave a big post because at that time I just told people, yeah, I'm just taking a break. Yeah, I'm just taking a break. And then finally I just told them, I said, I think this is it. I was like, can you just support me? And at this point I didn't know I found myself, but I found myself because I was actually being honest and truthful with everybody. And it led me to this now glorious like 7 years of reconnecting, rekindling, refinding what I call an appreciation for spirits, because there was definitely this war with me with identity as I found myself coming back into hospitality. But then I look at the many blessings that was given to me uh, to travel, to bartend. I was still pouring liquor in 2022, and I was good enough to do these jobs because I had this balance of a relationship with alcohol. I had found this relationship, this perfect synchronicity, you know. And yeah, man, I still think I'm trying to define that identity, but I do know one thing, I never am blaspheming my career or spirits. This is why I've been to Tails the last 5 times in my sobriety. Never came here when I drank. Probably a good thing. But yeah, it is a tough thing, and I watch a lot of my colleagues, and I think the reason I still do this is because I can be like a beacon for a lot of colleagues still going through it. And there's a lot of people that have reached out to me, and there's a lot of people I've seen get sober and tell me it was me that inspired. I'll say this: there was several people that inspired me as well. They know it. Chef Philip Spears, who actually got me into running, and I remember going to Ben's Friends for about 3-4 years and never joining that run club, and I finally did it like 2 years ago, and it changed my life to be open to things. So yeah, identity constantly shifting.
Chloe, you're about to hit 2 years. Especially within sobriety, 2 years feels like a very short amount of time, but also you live every single day of them. Can you walk us back to when you decided to make the decision?
Yeah. I Gosh, the summer leading up to summer 2024 leading up, I had spent the majority of that year really questioning whether or not I had a problem. Um, it was long extended periods of taking a break. It was an extended dry January. It was I took 3 months off, May, June, July. So I had already spent the majority of that last year sober because I was trying to gain control of my life. Me prior to getting sober, I was a good time. I was fun. And that was always like, I hid in that. I really hid in being fun, being a good time, being, like, and all of the mistakes or like things that I felt like really shameful of. Was I was drunk, I'm hungover. It was, it allowed me to make excuses for myself and really mask what a problem I had. Because on the surface, it was a really good time. It gave me confidence. It allowed my entire career, my entire life, was because of alcohol. And I took a lot of pride in that too, where work hard, play harder, but I did work very hard. And so all of the blowing off of steam of late nights of that turned into early mornings that turned into later mornings, or even going to tails where I was, oh, it's networking, this is for my career, things like that. I had really hidden in the problem, which was that I had a binge drinking problem. And that last final year was really me trying to like figure out and gain control over it. And made me realize that I had no control over it, because when you're trying to make excuses for yourself, is when you are, it was written on the wall. I just, took me a while to figure out. And uh, the final night that I went out drinking, um, I was celebrating my dog's birthday, which is hilarious and like any excuse to. I was a party girl. I was, it was fun. I was out with coworkers. Um, we had, ended the night at my house drinking. I was, getting angry texts from my boyfriend at the time downstairs, saying, like, people need to leave. You need to go to bed. And I woke up the next morning and I just was like, it needs to stop. I hate my life. It's not fun. It's like I was miserable. Like on the surface, it was so fun and groovy and great, but I was miserable for the better part of 3 years of like trying to figure out if I had a problem or not. And the second I finally admitted that, um, it was just like something shifted, and it's been like uphill ever since. But it took, and it felt like waiting for a rock bottom. I was waiting for a DUI. I was waiting for like losing my job, doing something unprofessional, or waiting for, I don't know, getting drunk and like cheating on my boyfriend, doing just like doing something destructive. And I had kept it going for such a long time of just teetering that line where that was rock bottom for me for years. And I voluntarily went to treatment. So I'm actually in recovery, which is different than just, being sober. So I take it very seriously. But yeah, the hardest part was like admitting that. And then ever since it's been very easy.
Can you talk a little bit about the kind of recovery journey? Because the next kind of line of questions that I would like y'all to flow into is, how did you do it? We heard a little bit about the why. And I think that's really important to hear the how and how your life progressed, because, we're all still professionals in spite of it. And I definitely had that moment within my sobriety where I looked at my career at the time, which was bartending, and I was like, am I going to have to leave this space? Am I going to have to leave the space, because can I even handle it at the time? And then I had the existential crisis of, no one is going to take me seriously if I remove alcohol from my life, but still try to perform the job. The kind of like never trust a skinny chef was playing in my head. And it was like one of those moments of just like, no, you are here not because you drank. Like, if drinking is going to do anything, it's going to remove you from this. So I was there in spite of all of it. So how did recovery come into play with this, and how did you view your career during this time?
Oh gosh, I was very, again, it was like the same. I was kind of moving the same way that I was moving in addiction, where I was moving in shame. I was very, very shameful of letting it get so bad that I had to go get help. And so I was very quiet about it for a very long time. The people really close to me knew that I was sober, and the people even closer knew that I went to treatment for it. But yeah, when I got back to work, it was basically like, yeah, I was gone for a month, and what of it? I really didn't acknowledge why I was gone. I was back. And because I had spent most of the year prior uh, taking long extended breaks from alcohol, no one really raised an eyebrow. So I was able to hide in it for quite some time while I still, again, was figuring it out. Because if I think it was like fear of failure. I was really worried about if I were to start drinking again or go out again, that's not just um that's a relapse for somebody in recovery. So I was very afraid of that and afraid of judgment around that. Layered on top of the additional judgment of, industry peers. I'm running a renowned beverage program, and I have a problem with alcohol. So, a renowned program that already had enough imposter syndrome when I first started. And then adding the complicated layer of sobriety and recovery on top of that. I kept it very quiet for a very long time. I honestly, for the first year, and even up to the point where I had clocked the year of sobriety, and I had planned I was going to make a big post about it, and I was really excited, and the day kind of came and went, and I was in my head about it. It felt a little performative, and I'm a pretty private person. So I just never said anything. And then I've always listened to the podcast. I listened back in 2020. And when you had posted at the beginning of the year that you were starting this next season, and I DM'd you. It started with a DM. I DM'd you and I was like, "Hey, huge fan. Would love to jump on, but also even if it doesn't go there, I just want to let you know I'm a huge fan and what you're doing is important." So I'd really never started talking about it until I came on the pod, which is a very large band-aid to rip off. But now it's I won't shut up about it. So I've become, the insufferably sober person, where now it's a well of words that I've just sat on for the last almost 2 years. Now it's something I'm very proud of, but it's taken me a very long time to get out of my own head.
Yeah, I'm so glad you reached out as well. Bjorn, how did you do it?
Oh, how did I do it? Well, like I said, I was numb, and I think I just came to this point where I knew something had to change and I mean, luckily the rock bottoms didn't take me out, because I did have DUIs. I fucking slept in ditches. I did things that a lot of people didn't see, and that's an interesting thing I need to bring up too. A lot of my colleagues was like, "I never thought you had a problem." Later on down the line, because I was good at hiding it. And also I wasn't an angry drunk or anything like that. I never, when I was around people, I was fairly, I could fake the funk. But, I had a pretty nice landing zone, because 6 months into my sobriety, lockdown took us all out. So there was no work. I couldn't work. I was furloughed and I had to sit there. I was saying before the cast started, I had ordered the Zero book from um, Aviary, Millennia, and I saw a path. You know what I'm saying? I already was making non-alcoholic cocktails. I was already fully involved in that. In fact, prior to even becoming sober, I wrote a whole non-alcoholic tea program for the omakase restaurant I worked at. Why did I do that? Because I cared about hospitality first. I never forgot that, and that's something that carried with me to this day. I was still a full-on drinker, but that's why I say like identity kind of is an ebb and flow, right? It's always kind of been in me. I just love serving people and love taking care of people. But that book like was like a lead to see there's other things. And then I was introduced to people like uh Derek Brown first with out of DC, and then I was invited to Tales to actually like talk about my thing. I was invited to also the Vegas Expo, and I didn't know it's not just the sobriety, but in the non-alc that there was actually a path to continue the career I was doing. You know, so I mean, this is the thing that kind of kept me going as far as the career path go, and I think it makes sense for someone who is so closely tied to hospitality to want to like grasp for it still. And I'm so happy that it was still available because I could have went off to any of my other creative like outlets. Um, but there's just something about engaging with people in a restaurant setting or engaging with people for 2 years straight. Actually, for a year straight, I was teaching like cocktail classes online, like, and it's something that kept me in it and reminded me over and over again that, while I was still having this battle, like I fucking hate alcohol, but because it destroyed my life, but it reminded me why I started doing the work I was doing. And I don't know, I feel like the same thing that took me out is this thing that brought me back, which is crazy to think about, to say it that way. And that's why I said before, I don't blaspheme it, because I see so many of my colleagues and friends and people are so interested now because people talk about it because of this sort of thing, or a Derek Brown or a Zero cocktail book. When you give the opportunity to let it see the light of day, it can exist and flourish. And I mean, like I said, I don't plan on quitting doing this work anytime soon. If if it leads me to something else, sure, why not? But this is the core to a part of my sobriety journey. And I tried my best to, and I will say this, like I think part of the downfall to like hospitality in general it's when we put so much into it and we never give back to ourselves. Like, I think my colleagues and people need to remember to play and be outside of the work sometime too, be outside of just alcohol and being so obsessive about it, or I don't know, I might be going on a tangent here, but I'm just saying this is the kind of things that save me. Like this, every time I think about, you know, why I still do this work is because sometimes I give myself lax. I go and DJ, and I'm still involved in a space that creates some sort of like environment for people. Or I'll go do some art for myself that's introspective, you know? So I just like, I think the blessing is just to always remember that I have these like more than just bartending or more than just service work. I can be of service in different ways. You know what I'm saying? I did volunteer time with Ben's Friends for shortly, as part of Run Club, like shortly, and helped. In fact, when I get back, it's actually our, I think, 6-year anniversary, and I will run. But yeah, hopefully I answered that question.
No, I think that's important. I think especially within my own story, when I was making that decision of can I even stay within hospitality, and I had that kind of clicked moment of just like, no, I'm here because of all the work that I put into this, not because I'm drinking. That was like the moment that I started taking non-alcoholic cocktails much more seriously. I dug my heels in and I was like, in what ways can I give back and continue building hospitality and programs in the way that it built me in spite of drinking. Andry, after you made the decision, you have to continue to push through. And that's really where a lot of like the hard work lives. It's waking up every day and continuing the conversation with yourself and continuing that change. How did that work for you?
Ooh, I love that you said after, because it's too easy to go into the past. I think three things immediately come to mind. Willingness to change. Um, I have found that my recovery lives in this continuum of being willing to change. Um, my recovery is not a terminal destination; it doesn't stop. Uh, and then the ability to have that conversation uh, with somebody that cares about me, that became huge in a way that I didn't think would be. And for me, that conversation came by way of a coworker who um, it was a server, and I was cashing her out at the end of the night, and she had seen my phone off to the side and saw that I was at a chart or something with a BAC level. And that conversation was a 2-year conversation. We got hired at the same time in 2016. And so I think it's important to note that for me, conversation doesn't just mean a one and done. Sometimes some people are lucky, and I'm one of those lucky people that had a conversation for 2 years of what sobriety could look like through her, and then what sobriety could look like for me. What do I want out of sobriety, um, or recovery? And I wanted change. I wanted peace, um, and being able to name that as a goal was integral to me planting down that flag of being like, yeah, okay, cool, let's go. And then the commitment is a word that rings a bell. Not just any commitment. I think for me, it's a commitment to showing up in my recovery within a community that supports me. And it took me a long time to discover that's what I wanted. And in a weird way, it was something that I understood and I couldn't put words to. I used to blame my lack of finding community on like my hometown. Um, I was like, I don't want that kind of support. Like, I don't want something that I don't identify with. And I want to be celebrated for who I am. I don't want to have to commit to some other change. And for me, that's like, for I have to say it, like sexual identity, really important. Um, Identity of myself within my skin, really important. I can't divorce myself from any of that. And it felt like I was going to be divorced from that or be forced to change my viewpoint of myself in a way that I could not identify with. And that's something that I've grown a love and a capacity for, and recovery gives me that. So a community of people, it was hard for me to be open with people and not be worried. And just not be worried about judgment, which is a totally different subject. But yeah, for me, that community turned out to be the 12-step community within Louisville. Um, Shocker, Louisville has over 400 meetings a week, unique meetings, lots of recovery there, lots. And then I did find bartenders and hospitality workers there, and I was just like mind blown. Um, and it even turned out that before I moved to Louisville, I was bar hopping, and 2 bartenders that I met in 2013 were both sober. And then I moved to Louisville in 2015, 16, and eventually showed up to be sober public, like within the community, and there they were. And I was like, oh, it's been years. Here you are. And it took action for me to show up as a commitment. And then the last way I'll use commitment too is the commitment to keep showing up for myself, even though it's terrifying. To keep showing up for a recovery I didn't have solidly. It felt just like it was slipping. It could slip through my fingers. And I really identify with what Chloe was saying in privacy. Like, I really don't like being public about it. I didn't, especially in the first year. And I didn't want to be public about it because it was like, yeah, I know my sobriety. I could be sober for a paycheck. I could be sober for 30 days, maybe. But it wasn't until I really found my community of recovery that I was able to be like, yeah, I can keep showing up for what's going to happen today and maybe what happens next. And I'll stay sober in between those moments where I can show up. And that really is a win. And I think it's important for me to label what wins are. And being able to show up despite all odds is a huge thing. And that led me to be more public, because showing up for wins publicly is hard, and it's not something I want to do necessarily. But I think about the times where I desperately wanted to see evidence that, it's possible to be sober behind the bar. And I remember being in this dead ass summer with the garage doors open at our bar, and I was like, I have to stay sober through this alone? Bullshit. Um, and I was like, I'm doing this alone, and I'm doing this a hard way. There has to be an easier way. I guess I'll stick around and find out what that is. So yeah, it's an open story, and I'm really I know I'm fortunate to have found it. Surprisingly, I haven't counted how many paychecks my sobriety has lasted, but to kind of go into the before, it took me. I knew I had a problem in 2011, and instead of seeking help, I sought relationships. I changed jobs, and it took me like 4 jobs and like one busted relationship, and like to discover that, oh yeah, it's time to change. It's time to not text exes and wonder what's on the other side of that. Like, it's time to really show up and um, be open to what the terrifying tomorrow is. And it's not that terrifying. Like, it's just tomorrow. It's just today. And that's a relief. So yeah, willingness, commitment, and I forget what else I said, the third word, but yeah, it's to be here for it. It's incredible.
Let's stick with tomorrow for a minute. And Chloe, that reminds me of what you were saying of just like, now you can't shut up about it. Once like the well of words, I think is the way that you put it. I think for my own story, I was most vocal about it because of the benefits that I was receiving. What joys have you found in the after that keeps you wanting to be vocal and wanting to share, and what happens after?
Oh gosh. I think what you said about community. I think in the early days of sobriety, I was really frustrated because I didn't have a community that I felt like I could relate with. The sober community was a little too sober. And I don't know how to put that other, but it just was a little too, I still work around alcohol. I'm around it. I can't be afraid of it. And my recovery program kind of was really wanting me to not continue a career in it. And then on the other end, my bartender community was a little too not sober for me, and being really angry at, why don't I have a community? Why don't I have a sense of community? And really, but that was again, like the internalized journey of like my own suffering was my own problem of like, I didn't have community because I wasn't talking about it, because I wasn't seeking it. I wanted it to just appear one day and like for me to just join, but like I had to open the dialogue. And I think that future me, or me now, and is that dialogue has been overwhelmingly like incredible. Being able to, have people approach me at work, or have people DM me, or have people come up, and ask me about either my own journey, or ask me about, they're quite, thinking about taking some time off, or having former colleagues from, 10 jobs ago DM me and say, I've been sober for 2 weeks. I thought I should let you know. And I'm not a sponsor. I'm not, claiming to be an expert at this. I'm still really figuring myself out. But that found community has come to me because I've started talking about it. And it's been incredible. So I love that it still is private. Again, it's still a community I found via DM, or via, in the hall at work, or it's my own version of it. I doing something like this is very difficult for me. I'm just a pretty quiet person. I'm not shy, but having that community find me because I've found my voice. And I loved the confidence that alcohol gave me, but so much more so love the confidence now, a confidence that's actually backed up by conscious thoughts. Like, I love the confidence that sobriety is giving me even more, because it's confidence I own. It's not artificial. It's not, 3 shots deep and I'm feeling groovy on the dance floor. It's, it's confidence that isn't rented. So yeah, I love that for me, and I love that for anybody that is, questioning or discovering sobriety.
Bjorn, you talked about hiding a lifestyle, but I've never once seen you hide your joy. What keeps that at the forefront?
It's kind of hard to not be happy when you're alive. Even when I was drinking, I wasn't happy. Well, up till the end days of it, when I couldn't really control that underlying thing. We all suffer with some sort of depression, with underlying traumas, and I can get into so many things and depress y'all about my life, but I'm not going to. Um, a long time ago, just like Andrew, I had actually already decided that I had a problem, but I used to use the terminology that I was a functioning alcoholic a lot in my career. But in 2009, I remember I called my mom crying, telling her that I think I was off a bender, done a whole bunch of coke, drank a lot, and I literally got into such a spiral that I wanted to admit to someone. I can only admit to someone that I loved truly, because at that point I didn't have the community I was seeking, that thing I was seeking. I couldn't confide in a friend at the time, but I already knew that the journey had already started. I just didn't know, how I was going to get there. But yeah, the joy, I couldn't not be happy, until I was at the point where my joy was stripped, and I had to rebuild. And again, like I said, when I made the decision to stop drinking, the underlying thought was like I was probably just going to try and just fix my relationship and decide to drink again. But it was because I found this community. And also, I think after the 6 months and then a year, 2 years, I started to see, like, especially when I started doing conventions and stuff, that just like how I saw a mirror in someone else and someone brought to me, I was like, this is of service. I am of service when I admit this shit out loud to people in a room, at a convention, face to face, whatever it may be. The action itself of what we do, those of us that are in recovery, or those of us who just take a break and don't even want to take the term and put it on yourself, you're making an action towards something that you never know. Like it will fucking change your life. I've met friends here that will, I have friends here that don't call themselves alcoholic, and that's totally fine. And they have a interesting relationship with liquor, and I'll never like talk to them and tell them that they have a problem, but I'll encourage them with what they're doing. I literally had a conversation with someone out this door before I came in here, and he told me, one of the first things he told me was like, dude, did you know I've been sober for a year? And I was like, that's fucking great. That's like the thing that reminds me of why why recovery is important to me, because I deep down is acknowledgement in an identity issue. Like every day I have to wake up and re-identify that I am an alcoholic, that I have a problem, or I'm in recovery. A lot of people don't like to call themselves alcoholic. There was a long time where I kind of like stopped saying it over and over in meetings, and I was just like, I'm in recovery, just so I could feel good that certain month or whatever I felt. And that's fine, but you just have to acknowledge that there is something that might keep you from having true joy and actually showing your sense of like appreciation and gratitude for present. I can't even fathom just sitting right here talking to y'all right now. 8 years ago, I was fucking just smoking a cigarette with a thought, like, like reeling from a night of partying. And how crazy is that to think about that? Like each one of us have like a moment like that or something like that. And a rock bottom could be it, like something harsh, or it could just be like a silent moment to just reclaim your fucking joy. Because I have now had, birthdays I can fucking remember. I've been able to go to friends' weddings and be able to remember. I've had my brother have babies, and I've been a part of it, like I have been present. And I'll take that over a fucking, I adore whiskey sometimes in like the thought process of making a cocktail, but I'll take that over a drink and feeling something that's not necessarily a true feeling. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Like, what the fuck? Like it's a very true thing. I'd rather see the joy in my niece's face than be at a cocktail bar. You know what I'm saying? Those simple things. I remember one time in a meeting, I said that one things I'm looking forward into life is just sitting on a patio old as hell, just looking out there, just chilling. either with a wife and kids, or just the wife, just myself, doesn't matter. As long as like I'm alive and I'm being able to breathe and enjoy life. I think I've found more of an appreciation for the simple things, to be quite honest. There ain't no FOMO, and God, do I remember when FOMO disappeared. I remember the day, I think it was like 3-4 years in, I was like, damn, I don't really give a fuck what's happening outside of like my own shit right now. And then when it happens, it's like, yo, I was so obsessed with everything else that was happening. I never grounded myself. I never truly even loved my career, I don't think, I had this passion, but I didn't have appreciation. I think I have more of an appreciation for my work now than I had this passion that I put on it, So yeah, man, that's what I got. Yeah.
I love that, Bjorn.
Yeah.
Andry, in what ways do you cultivate joy, and in what ways does joy find you?
Cultivating joy is a choice, first off. That's one thing I get a chance to recognize in every moment. And more often than not, I will ignore that moment because I'm doing whatever. It's easy for me to be preoccupied with whatever emotion I'm bringing throughout my day with me. But I answer that, and I think to be on the floor with my servers, with my team, I can make a joke out of everything. And it's so funny. I'm just thinking about the time where I waste of the thermal paper, but I typed in that quote from Taken, from Liam Neeson. I have a particular set of skills, and it was a dead ass day, and typed it out on like 8 lines. And I think just taking light of each moment. It's like playing a puzzle with other people. A lot of times I don't really know what to say until I used to not know what to say until I'd get behind a bar. And even in sobriety, even in recovery. And I tend to rely on being around other people and asking what other people are thinking or seeing. Where's your focus? And then we can make fun out of that moment. We can make a moment out of that, not make fun of each other. I mean, I guess I could, but it usually ends badly. Yeah, it's just creativity, I think. I think that's really, it's not just a matter of like creating a drink or creating a menu or curating a menu. It's a matter of being open to writing what's unwritten, really, and to living what's not lived yet. And sometimes it just starts with taking 2 breaths and then listening. Sometimes it's taking 2 breaths and then opening my mouth to come up with something. Yeah, it's funny. I've been thinking a lot about joy this trip because it's really, I think the recipe is always there for me to find something wrong, find something to struggle against, find something to stress out over. And it's really important for me to recognize that it's my responsibility to find the joy, because that's what I want to remember. And being able to choose that I want to remember that, like, as a memory in the future, but to live in the moment it gives me jazz hands. So yeah, really grateful to have that formula. Like I know I have that, and I can appreciate it. I remember sitting in my therapist's office in early recovery and being like, I don't give a fuck about all the good times because it's going to go away, and the bad is just going to be left anyway. So I'll just stew and I'll just suffer through it. Who gives a shit? And she's like, yeah, but it's good. So maybe you just enjoy it. I was like, mind-blowing thought. I guess I'll sit and enjoy. I guess I'll learn how to do that. And it's sometimes I need to sound things out, because my mind will make the most ridiculous generalizations, and it'll sound true in my head. And then I'll say it out loud and be like, I'm being ridiculous. I'm sitting in my fear. I'm choosing not to see the joy. I'm choosing to be angry at this point. And it's funny, when I'm not drinking, it's way easier to get out. It's way easier to find that narrow path, or to find the joy.
Andry, I'd love to talk briefly about Ben's Friends as a resource. Since the podcast has been around, I've always called out the website that it is available for folks. I've interviewed so many people on the podcast that have been within Ben's Friends, both heads and just folks that want to share. Can you talk to me just what does community mean within those rooms? What happens inside those rooms? How do you come to be involved? And what do you get out of Ben's Friends?
The first thing that comes to mind with what happens in those rooms is we have continued conversations amongst different people within hospitality, or who have chosen to leave hospitality and stick around, which I find so refreshing for folks, to be honest. And we really thrive with the object of getting sober, right? The subject of looking for what recovery can look like. How can my recovery look different today? And having that voiced amongst others who are behind the bar, who are in the office looking at spreadsheets and getting a chance to manage people who are in the trenches, whether that's line cook or on the floor. To contextualize that within service it's a challenge, right? And then to put language to what those challenges look like is what we do. And it's really cool. We have grown from, this is actually our 10-year anniversary, which is really cool. We started off in Charleston, South Carolina with an in-person meeting that still meets every Sunday. And we've grown to, I think, 28 or 30 in-person meetings across the country. And our online meetings started in COVID, March, with lockdown. So March of 2020. And it was a daily meeting at 1 p.m. So for a lot of us, it's either us waking up or somewhere in our sleep schedule. It topsy-turvy there. And it was a national Zoom meeting. And started off really intimate with a few handfuls of people. And then we started attracting more and more folks that were wanting to be part of that conversation for themselves and for other people. And I think that's where the magic of Ben's Friends really comes to fruition. And since 2020, we've grown from that daily meeting at 1 p.m. every day. We added in 3 nightly meetings. And then we've slowly added in. So we have 2 meetings a day now, 11 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. daily, with the exception of Wednesdays, where we have a respective femmes meeting and men's meeting. And then we've also added in a friends and family meeting for those whose spouses or partners or loved ones are in hospitality and struggling to get sober. And that meeting is led by one of my friend's wife, and it's amazing to see the power of conversation and how that brings clarity. Like I said, I thought that I was just frustrated and alone. And had I known that there were other bartenders and servers and bar managers who were like, yeah, we've got this, I think I would have signed on to recovery way sooner. But I needed to experience that frustration for me alone, for me to see talking to others as a true option. I think the other part too is that we do have regulars within our rooms, and that's something special. It's so cool to watch strangers like be a stranger and then become part of more, to become part of a community that continues to meet throughout the weeks, months, and years, and throughout the different seasons of life and different seasons of recovery. And that's where that's where my true understanding of what recovery can look like, where that gets refined, where that gets lived in. I think there's a term, wabi sabi. I don't want this clean, factory-made experience of recovery that just anybody can have. I want recovery that's tailored and worn in and feels comfortable. And I want to see other people that live that life. And we get to see that within Ben's Friends. And it's because people choose to show up and choose to open up when it's maybe the hardest time. And I feel the last thing for me to say is we wouldn't exist if it weren't for the folks that decide to show up and stay silent and keep their camera off on the Zoom, because that's an important part. Just showing up to just be there and listen. It's not passive. And I really want to emphasize that if you're listening to a podcast, it's not a passive activity. Especially if you hit repeat. So if you're hitting repeat on this, there's something important. And I think that's a really empowering moment to have, is to be like, this is important for me. And so hearing other people who might be characters on the screen or characters in headphones, and realizing that they're real people with real problems that are not easier or harder than mine. They're real people with real problems. And it's a growing moment, and choosing to face that is really brave. So I want to commend anybody that's listening right now. It's a golden moment to have, even if it feels like shit.
Thank you for that. And Mickey, if you're listening, we love you.
Love you, Mickey.
Love you, Mickey.
Chloe, what do you love about yourself?
I love that, and we talked about this when we did our episode together, but I love the softness that sobriety has given me. And I mean that in a way where kind of, I guess, the noise has quieted to a really peaceful way of life that I have not been accustomed to living. Again, it's work hard, play harder. Everything's a party, everything's groovy all the time. And what's really groovy right now is how peaceful my life is. And I love that. And I love that I get to be a softer friend, a softer partner, a softer daughter or sister. And it, I think getting sober didn't fix all my problems, but it quieted everything around me where I could begin to address them. And it truly is called doing the work, because every day is a different form of that. But that peace and that gentleness has really allowed me to do so. So and I love that. I love that I've discovered that. I've always kind of been a determined individual and very stubborn. Incredibly stubborn, so much so that really drove the early months of my sobriety. Like, I'll be damned if I fail at this, because I already failed at drinking. So I'm glad that now I'm allowed myself to soften and really kind of just be peaceful. It's something that I was not expecting out of sobriety, and was pleasantly surprised by, which again seems weird to say out loud, because you think all the chaos that I was living in before, of course sobriety brings peace, but it was something that I really had to discover for myself, and I love it, and I love that is something that I can identify as a peaceful person.
That's incredible to hear. Bjorn, what do you love about yourself?
Everything. Are you a Taurus, by the way? Because stubbornness, I swear to God, I'm a Taurus too. You see, I knew it. As soon as you said stubborn, I was like, she's a Taurus. I love that I finally came to a point where I could accept the broken part of me, the unhealed part of me, the silly part of me, the messy part of me, all of it. The beautiful part of me. I love that I can accept all of me now, and I love that I'm willing to work on the parts that I'm speaking of to be the better version of myself, and not the best, but the better version of myself. I love that I continue to try to think out of the box, even if it's fucking stupid and no one cares, because I like this. I want to be creative. I love that I play. I say that so much because we forget. So yeah, there's so much to love, I love that I'm able to be here and interact and be real instead of hiding behind the facade that I actually put on a lot when I was drinking, right? And when I was using, because I did put on a facade. It was a part of me, but it was very much a play. I wanted to be this thing. I was on, kind of like we know if you're in the service, you put yourself on sometimes. It's like it's you, but it's not you. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just so grateful, and I love just being me.
That's what I love about you as well. Andrew, what do you love about yourself?
I love the version of me, the manager that showed up to line up with a hand puppet to give the like shift brief after family meal. Her name's Roxy, and she's a possum. I love the versions of myself the version of myself that fought hard to be. Thank you. And that persisted when moments looked impossible. I find joy in recognizing that I can hustle, like Björn said. I love selling. It's fun. And sometimes I like trick myself into thinking I wasn't good at it, and then I'll hear from somebody else, "You were good at that." And I was like, "Yeah, I am good at that." I I really love celebrating silliness. It's really important to me. And I really value the listening to rain, which I think we're about to get a lot of soon with Tropical Storm Bertha. And I love the version of me that enjoys nature, like being out on the bike or just being outside, period. Hanging out with trees is awesome. And I've never been accused of having, a poor vision of trees. So, I mean, they'll always, with luck, trees will always be there as long as forever on Earth. So, yeah, give a tree a hug if you have a chance.
I rarely answer this because it's my show and nobody asked me, but I have a long version and a short version. My short version is that I love that I'm still here because I was living a life because I thought that I wouldn't be. And I love that I'm here. And the motto of the show is that there is no proof like the present, and you can't be here unless you're in the presence. Right now I'm in the presence of many great people. It's shocking to me that even one person would want to enter this room, to hear this thing, to be a part of a podcast that I thought would never exist, that I thought nobody would ever ask me to do because I didn't know that I could do this thing. So thank you so much to the three of you for continuing to share, for being a joy in my life. Tales of the Cocktail was the very first place that I ever heard that the show meant something to someone, because it happened within COVID lockdown, and I had these conversations and I cast them out and they just went somewhere and I didn't know where they went. And Tales of the Cocktail was the first time I ever saw somebody face to face and they thanked me for it and they said what the show meant. And it is because of that I continue to do this program. I do it for myself because the show gave me the words. I do it for so many others that are on the fence or questioning the relationship with alcohol or looking to continue a life with mindfulness drinking, or just thinking about the relationship at all. And sometimes that's all it takes. I don't ask that everyone needs to give up completely the way that I did. I just ask that you think about it, that you take inventory of your life, that you think about how you feel when you do consume alcohol, and more importantly, that you think about how you live and how you feel when you don't drink alcohol, because that's the real you. That's the one that's present, and there's no proof like the present. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Chris, who's in the back, who produces the show and always makes it sound good. Thank you to Juan, who's filming this. Thank you to my brother, who made the theme song when you listen to it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's No Proof. Thanks for listening. New conversations are added bi-weekly wherever you get your podcasts and in video form on YouTube. Music for No Proof was written and performed by my brother Kyle Gandy, right here in Columbus, Ohio. There's no proof like the present.